Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear viewers. Today we are going to discuss interest and banking regarding the 23 objection series, which is now being recorded by Ustaz Javed Ahmed Ghamidi and his literary assistant Muhammad Hassan Ilyas. So in their ongoing dialogue, we have seen that as far as this issue is concerned, 7 questions have been raised, and I'll discuss and summarize these 7 questions vis-a-vis interest and banking. The first question which has been discussed and raised is regarding the definition of interest. Ustaz Ghamidi says that as far as interest is concerned, the Quran has not given any definition of interest, or riba as the Quranic word is, because it didn't need to do so, because riba itself is a term of the Arabic language, just as it is a term of the English language when we use the word interest, and it is something which is commonly and generally understood. So the Quran did not need to define it. And as far as the definition of riba or interest is concerned, we know that whenever a person demands something over and above the lent amount, then that amount is called interest. And in Arabic, it is called riba. So it is not correct to demand from the Quran any definition of riba or interest, because this is something which people understood. It is much like the words adultery or theft or fornication, because we know that these are commonly understood words in the English language, and in the Arabic language, of course, their equivalents are known. And precisely for this reason, when people translated the Quran in other languages, they replaced the word riba with whatever was the word equivalent in other languages. For example, in the English language, they replaced it with the word interest. In the Urdu language, they used the word sood, and so on and so forth. The second question that was discussed was that why at all is interest prohibited? Ustaz Ghamidi has answered this question in that dialogue series by telling us and by informing his viewers that interest in itself is an immoral transaction. When you demand money over and above the lent amount, you have no right to demand that money, because primarily what we have to understand is that whatever is beyond our needs, whatever we have beyond our needs, is the right of the society, and the Almighty wants us to give it away to the society. And the second best option is to lend that money to people for their needs. And there is absolutely no question of earning anything through lending, because lending is a virtual act, is a noble act that you should do, and that in itself is a second degree or a second grade act, because the first thing that was demanded from people was that whatever they have in excess of their needs must in any case be given to the society. So this is what makes it immoral, and that immorality is grounded in the fact that whenever you lend a person money, that money is consumed by him, that money is used up by him, and whenever you have to demand that money back, that person must create that used up money, and of course the principal amount as well, which makes it a means of oppression and injustice. And this is primarily why interest has been prohibited. And this actually brings us to the next question that was discussed, which is the third question, and that is that why at all is this interpretation of riba, as we have seen, that it is basically the money earned on money itself. Why is it prohibited when we earn money from other assets? For example, it's the rent that we earn from when we rent out a premises. So when renting out a premises and earning money as a result is absolutely allowed, then why is it that if money is given and you cannot earn money from that money as if you are exacting its rent? So the third question actually hinges upon this difference between riba and rent. Ustaz Ghamidi says that rent and riba, again, they are two different terms. Rent is always on things that are non-consumable, that are always left intact. For example, a house or a car or any building that you give on rent, because all that the person who is a tenant needs to do when you need to vacate, when you have to make that person vacate their premises, is to ask him to vacate it, and he's going to vacate it. But when you are asking a person the rent on the money, then he's not just going to give you the rent on the money, he has to create that money itself, because it has been used up. So basically, rent is on things which are non-consumable, and riba is on things which is consumable. And precisely for this reason, the two are entirely different, and we have to understand that one cannot be applicable on the other. The fourth question that was discussed was regarding the issue of interest and inflation. Now, it is something of a very common observation that when we lend an amount to people for their needs, and that amount, of course, is going to undergo depreciation because of inflation. So when the money is going to be returned, it will not have the same value as when it was being lent or when it had been lent. So in this regard, if any inflationary adjustment is made, it is perfectly in line with the norms of justice. For example, if you lend currency, you can link it up to some solid commodity and then demand the same quantity as that commodity. For example, if you lend money, you can link it to gold, and then you can demand from that person that, well, when you return the money, you remain the same portion of gold or same weight of gold, and its equivalent in currency whenever the time of its return is. It's absolutely perfect to have this adjustment on inflation due to inflation. And we find this from the Quran as well, because the Quran says, La tazlimuna wa la tuzlamun, that there should be no harm done to the person who is also lending, which means that there should be no injustice which is going to be meted out to him. And of course, if this inflationary adjustment is not made, then he is going to be suffering for that. The fifth question that was discussed in this regard was regarding saving schemes. Now, as far as these schemes are concerned, these are schemes in which basically governments, they borrow money from the common user, from the common man, and then use it for their projects and return it back to the consumers or to the lenders in the proportion or in the ratio or in the amount that they deem appropriate. So Ustaz Javed Ahmed Ghamidi says that basically this is something which is interest, of course, although there is one element that is slightly different, and that is when a person who basically to whom you lend the money, he is the person who tells you the amount that you are going to be receiving. So the lender is going to demand the money from the borrower. But in this case, the borrower, which is the bank or which is the government, in fact, it's not doing so. So it's returning whatever is possible for the government. So yes, it's a loan. So in its spirit, it is still interest. But these saving schemes, they are more, I mean, if people like widows or people who are elderly, people who have no other means to earn, if they rely on these schemes, then of course this is something which they can benefit, but they have to remember that in their spirit, these are interest-based schemes, although they are not interest per se, but they are interest-based. And in their situation, if they are benefiting from them, then it is virtually because of the fact that they are under necessity or they are under compulsion. Now we come to the sixth question that was discussed amongst Ustaz Javed Ahmed Ghamidi and Muhammad Hassan Ilyas. The sixth question that was raised was against Ustaz Ghamidi's view, which he has professed in his book, Mizan, and also he has professed this, or he has expressed this in a number of his lectures, and that is that as far as paying interest is concerned, it is not proscribed, it is not prohibited. Of course, what is prohibited is the charging of interest, is to consume interest. That is what the Quran has prohibited. And in this regard, there are three verses of the Quran which are primarily presented by Ustaz Javed Ahmed Ghamidi in his discourse. And he says that in order for something to be prohibited, it has to be expressly prohibited by the Quran. In the case of paying interest, you'll find that there is not a single verse in the Quran which says so, that when you pay interest, you are doing something wrong. At all instances in the Quran, wherever interest is discussed, it's always the consuming of interest, the charging of interest, which is prohibited. And there are at least three verses which are very prominent in this regard, and you'll find that in all these three instances, it is the person who is charging interest, who is being proscribed, who is being told that this is something that you should not do. Paying interest, of course, is not discussed. Yes, there is one area, or there is one instance in Surah Baqarah where people who pay interest, they are also discussed, but not even in the semblance of any way, even in any insinuation are they told that they should not pay interest. So the first of these verses is in Surah Al-Imran, which is very known to every person who has read about this whole issue. It says, Ya ayyuhal lazina amanu la ta'kulu riba adha'afan mudha'afa. which means that believers do not consume this interest, doubling it manyfold. Again, you'll see the word la ta'kulu riba ad'afa mudha'afa. Do not consume interest. You don't find the word paying interest being used here. In Surah Rum, which is the other instance, the words used are وَمَا آتَيْتُم مِّن رِبًا لِيَرْبُوَ فِي أَمْوَالِ النَّاسِ فَلَا يَرْبُو عِندَ اللَّهِ, which means, and that which you give as loan and interest, that it may increase on other people's wealth, it has no increase with God. Again, you find the interest that is being consumed, which is being discussed, not paying of interest. And the most comprehensive of these instances is in Surah Baqarah, in which the Quran again has said that as far as consuming interest is concerned, this is absolutely prohibited. So the words that are used in the Quran are الذين يأكلون الربا لا يقومون إلا كما يقوم الذي يتخبطه الشيطان من المس ذلك بأنهم قالوا إنما البيع مثل الربا وأحل الله البيع وحرم الربا فمن جاءه موعظة من ربه فانتهى فله ما سلف وأمره إلى الله ومن عاد فأولئك أصحاب النار هم فيها خالدون. The translation, as you can see, is being displayed on your screens. It says, those who devour interest will rise up on the day of judgment like the man whom Satan has driven to madness by his touch, because they claim that trading is like interest, and how strange it is that Allah has permitted trading and forbidden interest. Consequently, he who received this warning from the Almighty and desisted in obedience thereto, then whatever he has taken in the past belongs to him, and his fate is in the hands of God. And those who repeat the offense will be companions of the fire and will abide therein forever. Again, you can see how the Quran has compared the person who consumes interest to a person who has been made mad by the touch of Satan. Again, we find no mention of the fact that there is any paying of interest that is being discussed, in spite of the fact, as you can go along these verses and read the next part later on as it comes up, discussing people who also pay interest. It not even stopped them from doing so or acquiring a loan and interest. So if we move a little ahead in these verses, it says, يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وذروا ما بقي من الربا إن كنتم مؤمنين فإن لم تفعلوا فأذنوا بحرب من الله ورسوله وإن تبتم فلكم رؤوس أموالكم لا تظلمون ولا تظلمون. Believers, fear Allah and give up what remains of your demand for interest. If you do it not, beware of war from God and His Prophet. And if you repent, then you can have your principal amount. Neither will you be allowed to deal unjustly, nor will you be dealt with unjustly. So again here, people who have taken interest or they are taking interest, they are being told that desist from this unjust demand of exacting interest from the person who has borrowed money from you. And this is something that must be abstained for. And if you do not, then you must wait that God and His Prophet, of course, implying the fact that in those times, there would be a severe action that would be taken against them. And if they don't desist from charging interest. Again, we see that the person who is paying interest is not discussed here. So in the whole corpus of the Quran, there is not a single verse that can be cited, which says that paying interest is also something which was condemned by the Quran. Now, there's one place in Hadith, or one instance in Hadith, which seemingly says that paying interest is also forbidden. So we have covered the Quran. The Quran does not say so. As far as Hadith literature is concerned, there is one instance which has been cited as against Ustaz Ghamidi's opinion, and that is this verse or this hadith which actually says, لَعَنَ النَّبِي صلى الله عليه وسلم آكِلَ الرِّبَا وَمُوكِلَهُ. And at other instances, it also refers to the fact that people who write the document of loan and people who bear witness to this document. So the words are, God's Prophet has cursed the person who consumes interest, and mukilahu. This mukilahu is basically translated as the one who pays interest. As far as the Arabic language is concerned, yes, this can be translated. This could be the translation that one pays interest and the word be used as mukil. But if you look at the context of the verse, you can clearly see that people who are helping those people who are agents of money lenders or professional money lenders are being discussed. So you see, in the times of the Prophet, money lending was a business, and this business could not have flourished until agents of these money lenders would be sent into society. They would gather the clients, bring them to that money lender, have that whole document written, documented, and then bear witness on that deed or that loan document. So basically, people who are cooperating with this evil are being discussed here, and hence the word mukil cannot be translated as the person who is paying interest. The more correct translation, keeping in context of the hadith itself, is people who make others consume interest, not people who pay interest, but who cause other people to consume interest, because they are the ones, as agents of money lenders, who go into society and bring people and then aid the whole setup. So basically, if you look at the other two things which are mentioned in certain other narratives, which say that people who write down this document of loan, people who are witness to this document of loan, they are all equal, which means that basically people who are cooperating with that money lender are being discussed, and hence the word mukil in no way can be translated as the paying or the payers of interest. It can only be translated as agents who make other people pay interest. That is the correct translation. So therefore, there's no room for this narrative to be presented as evidence in favor of the fact that, yes, the Prophet also had proscribed or prohibiting the payment of interest. Now we come to the seventh question, which was discussed in this series regarding interest and banking. And this is one of the most important questions, and it relates to banking or the system of banking itself. Ustaz Javed Ahmed Ghamidi is of the view that the current banking system is no longer the exact replica of the original banking system in which money lending was the primary motive, and in which money was lent to people and then interest was, as a result, accrued and it was collected by the bank. The banking system of today, the services that it presents primarily are four. So one of these services is that it gives loans for commercial projects. The second is that it gives loans for personal consumption. The third is that it gives us the use of the credit card in the form of course, credit that we can pay back. And the fourth is that it gives us this very big benefit of buying a house or an asset, could be a car or a house, on the basis of loan. Now, he has given this opinion that all these four services, which are the main services of banking, they are in line with the Islamic Sharia. If some alterations can be made as far as the terms which are used in banking is concerned, and also some of the operations are slightly adjusted. And if this is done, that there is no need for a separate department for Islamic banking or a whole separate bank system to be evolved on the basis of Islam, because the current banking system can be molded into the system which is envisaged by religion or by Islam. So as far as the first of these services is concerned, which is giving loans on the basis of interest, the Ustaz says that this has to be immediately stopped. The practice of giving loans to people for their private consumption, barring for any inflationary adjustments, they should stop charging any interest, and they should be just given as a loan to these personal users. As far as the second of these is concerned, which is that in which you are financing a commercial project, in that case, if the financing is through the commercial project, then if the project that you are financing, if that has to be discontinued for any reason, then interest should not be charged in any way. And at the time that the whole business or commercial venture is discontinued, from that very day, any charging of interest must be immediately stopped, and only the principal amount should be taken back by the bank. And in this way, the bank would become a partner to that business by having this whole new element that we call principal secured banking in use, which means that the bank will only have the amount which is the principal amount if the whole commercial venture is shut down. And when it is not shut down, then it can charge an amount which can be deliberated upon, which can be fixed on an approximate amount. And this amount, if it is charged, as long as the business is running, then this would be absolutely without any problem, because it's not just through profit and loss sharing that a bank can enter into any partnership. Another form of this partnership is this principal secured partnership, which means that the bank is financing that amount to the person or to the commercial venture. And that commercial venture, as long as it is running, is paying back the bank with an approximate profit. And as soon as it is shut down, then after that, no principal amount, except for the principal amount, no profit should be demanded. As far as the third service is concerned, in which a bank buys an asset for a consumer, for example, mortgage is being implied here. In this regard, whether it's a car which is being supplied through mortgage or a house itself, then in this regard, if the bank makes this change that it enters into a hire and purchase agreement with the consumer, which means that the amount which has been lent by the bank is used in actually buying that asset, and the amount which is being paid back by the person who has bought that asset is part payment of that asset itself, and also until the time he becomes the complete owner by buying off the whole house or the whole car, whatever the case may be, he's actually paying rent on whatever he has bought. So basically that extra amount is the rent that is being paid. And if this term is adjusted instead of calling it interest, because virtually what the person is doing is that when he's being given a car or a house or any other asset or mortgage, he is using that asset. And when he's using that asset, then the money that is being charged over and above that is not interest, it is actually rent of that asset. And the fourth and final adjustment which the current banking system should make is regarding credit cards. And today they operate on the principle that if the time is consumed, I mean, if the time within which you had to pay back a certain amount, if you pass that time, then you have to pay interest to the bank. So Ustaz Ghamidi says that instead of doing so, what can be done is if they cross that time limit, then a penalty can be imposed on the person for whom that service has been granted, and that would be perfectly in line. So instead of imposing interest on that payment in which you are using that credit card and not being able to pay on time, you can charge penalty on that whole transaction, and that penalty is because that person has not been able to pay that amount in the specified time. So if these changes are made, these four primary changes are made in the current banking system, this banking system has the potential of transforming itself into a system which is absolutely something which the Sharia has nothing against it. And besides that, we have to also understand the service which banking is provided is unparalleled in some respects. For example, two of its ancillary services like money transfer and protection of money is something that cannot be objected to in any way, and these are the services that we gain. And other than these services, if the reforms that we have just mentioned are incorporated into the banking system, then according to Ustaz Javed Ahmed Ghamidi, that the whole system of banking is something that can be brought in line with the spirit of the Sharia. So this brings us to an end to this discussion. And as I've said, the 7 questions that we have raised and discussed and summarized are the ones which were discussed in this topic. And hopefully, if they are deliberated upon, we will get an alternative view of Ustaz Javed Ahmed Ghamidi on some of the areas of interest that have been presented.